everybody. We'd start out our gathering this morning by singing number 349. We gather together. It's in the gray hymnal, number 349. Good morning to you all, and welcome to the Metro East Unitarian Universalist congregation here in Glen Carbon, formerly First Unitarian of Alton, Illinois. We are now here in Glen Carbon. We are spiritually led by the Reverend Dr. Claudia Hall. My name is John Herndon. My pronouns are he, him, and I have been a member since 2006, I think. Came to the Alton Church. I came to ask questions and not necessarily for answers, so here I am still asking questions. We remember those who came before us. Our ancestors are many, and their collective memories guide and direct us through all of our days. We are conscious that the land that we occupy is shared. The universe has granted us a perfect place to grow our food, give us shelter, and to give us space for spiritual practice. To that end, we are conscious that we must protect the land that we borrow so that generations to come can grow and thrive in harmony and love with the universe that is. We also recognize that this land is stolen and is occupied from the first people, the Anoka, the Tamaroa, and the Osage. Others have come to evade and seize, while others have come to live in harmony and share. Our land is baptized in the blood, sweat, and a river of tears from enslaved Africans who were forced from their home and their ancestors to become chattel property here in this land. May our spiritual practice recognize these relationships as we strive to live in harmony with our past, our present, and to be forever conscious of the future that we create. We are a spiritual people. We are a people of faith and love. We are so glad that we are here together in the sanctuary or online. And I welcome everyone here to this home of comfort, spirit, justice, and hope. We are Unitarian Universalists. We open our service with a prelude this morning by our Prophet's Joy. An important ritual in the Unitarian Universalist faith is the lighting of our chalice. Unitarian Universalists have many different interpretations of this flaming chalice, including the light of reason, the warmth of community, and the flame of hope. Join me in celebrating all these reasons and more. If you are watching elsewhere and have a chalice or candle, please light it now as we all join in saying the unison words projected on the screen. We hallow this time together by kindling the lamp of our meditation. Today's message resonates with all of our UU principles, all of our 7 stated principles, but especially the first, the inherent worth and dignity of all people. The fourth, free and responsible search for the truth. And for me, the proposed 8th principle. We, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. As part of our weekly worship service, we take time for the expressions of joys, concerns, or sorrows. In front of us is a bowl here, filled with water, and a bowl with stones available to place in the bowl, representing your joys and concerns. So please start at the back, and Robin will guide you up front. Take a moment to stop and reflect. Send your energy out to the universe and place your stone or stones in the water. Normally, this time of our worship service, we also have a story for our children that are present. So, no children today, but we're going to call this a story for all ages. And it's called, it's by a man named Gary Kowalski. It's called Faith is Like a Walking Stick. So, for this story, I brought my walking stick today, which is very unique. This is made by a gentleman in Alton. His name is John Dunlow, and most people know him by the Stick Man. So, he finds these sticks along the river and paints them and carves them up to various shapes and whatever. As he says, this kind of defines what will emerge out of there. So you can take a look afterwards. Yeah, it's a great piece of art. So faith is like a walking stick. How many of us like to go hiking? I have a number of walks nearby. I like to hike Hunger Mountain, Snake Mountain, others. Or if you don't want to drive, my wife and I just go down to our local park. Where in just a few steps you can forget you're in the city. Sometimes we bring our dog Smokey along, and Smokey isn't as strong as fast as he used to be, but that's okay because I'm certainly not young or as fast as I used to be either. And Smokey reminds me to slow down. A walk in the woods isn't a race after all. It's not all about seeing how fast you can go or how quickly you can get to the end of the trail. A walk can be like a meditation. A series of moments to be aware of all the sights and sounds along the way. If you're in too big a hurry, you forget to hear the birds sing. You might not see the little mushroom growing under the tree, the one with the yellow cap. But even when you take your time, a walk can sometimes be tough going. What if it starts to rain? And what if there's a wet, soggy, boggy place where the stepping stones are few and far between? Well, in those cases, I found a couple of things that help. First of all, it helps to have a friend or two along. Because then, even if it starts to pour and the raindrops are trickling down your nose, you can always sing a song together, and it's hard to feel sorry for yourself when you're singing an old Beatles song. And for those soggy, boggy places, if you can't have a friend along, there's nothing like a walking stick, which helps you keep your balance, whether you're walking up a hill or down a hill. Makes you a little steadier on your legs. Walking sticks make me think about our faith, Unitarian Universalism, which is a little different from other religions because for us, life is like a long walk or a journey. It starts when we're little children and just learning about our world, and then grows as we grow. With each step, we're always gathering more information, gaining more experiences, finding out about ourselves, and as we explore, our beliefs change. The things we imagine might be true when we're 6 years old are different from the dreams we have when we're 60 or 61. And none of us is just certain where or how the trail ends or what we'll find when we finally reach the mountaintop. But we know that other people have walked this way before, and that gives us hope and courage to continue our adventure. Now, just like a long trail, life sometimes gets a little tough and even a little scary. That's why it helps to have friends and a spiritual community like this. And at times we start to lose our balance. We begin to fall down, and then there's a hand to have a walk. It's handy to have a walking stick. Unitarian Universalism, our religion, is like a walking stick. It's not a religion that solves all problems. It's not a religion that can magically lift us over the muddy places. It's not a religion that spares us the necessity to dig deep and struggle. There's a big boulder we have to climb over or other challenges that come along. But it is a religion that can help us keep our equilibrium, that helps us keep our feet on the ground, which reminds us when the going gets hard and each of us is strong, each of us is resilient, and each of us is capable, however we identify our gender, our ethnicity, our race, whether we're big or little. And Unitarian Universalism is a faith that encourages each one of us to find and make our own beliefs. Not a one-size-fits-all religion, but one we constantly tool and retool as we go. So this is my personal walking stick. Each of you have the opportunity to make your own stick, just the right size and the right weight, the right thickness, so you can have a firm grip help you go wherever you need to go. And as Unitarian Universalists, you too can find and make a religion you can call your own. Recently, we passed another anniversary of the Supreme Court decision. Roe versus Wade originally decided in 1973. It's always been a source of polarization among American political leaders, and the resistance to and the work to overturn became the favorite tool of conservatives to control. Prior to abortion, pregnancy, and indeed even the right to privacy was low on conservative, Republican, and evangelical Christians' their priority lists. But then they realized that the civil rights for African Americans was an issue that they were no longer going to be able to control. So political professionals, strategists, managers decided abortion was the new issue that would keep them engaged and employed. Prior to the Roe decision, abortion was not an issue that a lot of evangelicals cared about much. The Bible says life begins with the first breath, Genesis 2:7. But evangelical leaders began to see what they saw as a degeneration of traditional values, family values. Traditional values, family values, these are code words for women's subjugation and control by men. I want to read today, too, from a book. As I was preparing the words today in this introduction here, I kept coming back to this. This is a book that I've been reading recently called Allow Me to Retort, A Black Guy's Guide to the Constitution, by Elie Mystal. He's a law correspondent for the Nature magazine. He's a 2003 graduate of Harvard Law School, not a practicing lawyer anymore, but he writes about law. And his preface here is exactly what I wanted to say today, so I'm going to read a little bit of that to you today. 6 months after this book came out in hardcover, Republicans and the religious right achieved an essential victory against American women. 6 conservative justices voted to revoke reproductive freedom for women and progressive people, and pregnant people. Their victory was not a surprise to anybody who's been paying attention. These people have been aiming at reproductive rights ever since they were first recognized 50 years ago. They poured financial resources into laying the legal, political, and social ground toward revoking a constitutional right for the first time in American history. But conservative judges, scholars, lawyers would tell you that this attack on bodily autonomy was not driven by the Republican Party agenda or a minority set of fundamentalist Christians. Instead, they say the rulings are compelled by the objective intellectual framework for interpreting laws and rights known as originalism. Conservatives will tell you that originalism is merely a method of constitutional interpretation. They'll argue that their method grounds judges who are not elected into the federal system in the original public meaning of the laws as they were written by the members of the government, who are elected by the popular majority. They'll say that originalism is objective toward the outcomes of cases and restrains the disposition of the judges. Conservatives, as is so often the case, are lying. Originalism is not an objective interpretation framework. It is outcome-driven choice made by a specific agenda. It is both backwards-looking and asswards-looking, ossifying the law in a hollow past when women, non-whites, and openly LGBTQ people didn't have a voice or a say in how the laws were written. And far from restraining unelected judges, originalism encourages conservatives to become the most extreme versions of themselves as they issue radical rulings severely out of step with the modern world or with people. The full measure of originalism's intellectual bankruptcy and cynical outcome-driven philosophy was put on display in 2022, Dobbs versus Jackson's Women's Health, the case that overturned Roe versus Wade. In it, 6 conservative justices upended 50 years of reproductive rights. rights for women and for pregnant people, along with a canon of the Supreme Court's own precedents to drive their own anti-abortion agenda and fundamentalist Christian dogma about when life begins. Writing for the majority, Justice Samuel Alito states bluntly, the Constitution makes no reference to abortion. He goes on to write that abortion is not deeply rooted in the nation's history and traditions until the later part of the 20th century. Such a right was entirely unknown in American law. All that is true, but does anybody want to guess why? Does anybody wonder why the white men who wrote the Constitution and claimed exclusive authority to amend and interpret it for nearly 200 years didn't include provisions relating to the bodily autonomy of people who didn't happen to be white men? Is anybody perplexed as to why a group of slavers who used black babies as profit centers didn't think to include rights for black women that they raped to abort the future unpaid labor in the nation's history and traditions required? Does the fact that white women didn't get the right to vote until the 20th century and non-white women didn't functionally get that right until the middle of the 20th century have something to do with abortion rights being entirely unknown to their dumbass husbands and fathers before the back half of the 1900s? Alito knows exactly why the word abortion doesn't appear in the text of the original Constitution or its amendments, all but one which were written and ratified before 1973's Roe v. Wade decision. He knows why it's not addressed in American law until women gained political power. He knows that treating women and pregnant people as fully human people who don't lose their status as autonomous beings from the moment of conception is a relatively new concept in this country, which is why he grounds his opinion in the past. He's not applying originalism as an interpretive framework to guide his decisions. He's using originalism as a justification for his predetermined political outcome of rescinding reproductive rights. Indeed, originalism works only after the fact justification for rulings, because it's almost comically useless as an objective framework to analyze anything. Let me explain how originalism is supposed to work, according to its acolytes. Stephen Calabrese, one of the intellectual heavyweights of the Federalist Society, a group of conservative lawyers that tried to force originalism down America's throats, defines originalism this way. Originalists believe that the constitutional text ought to be given the original public meaning that it would have had it had at the time of the law. The original meaning of the constitutional text can be discerned from dictionaries, grammar books, and from other legal documents from which the text might be borrowed. Originalism is often grouped with another philosophy called textualism, which is a theory of interpretation that seeks to adhere the so-called plain meaning of text as it's written. It all sounds objective. First, look at the words of the law and figure out what they mean. If the meaning of the words is ambiguous, look toward the people who wrote the words and what they thought at the time that they were written, and then rule. If it were that easy, an algorithm could be Chief Justice. Instead, then I have to ask, Alexa, what are fundamental rights? She tells me, and I'm quoting here, fundamental rights are a group of rights that have been recognized by a high degree of protection from encroachment. It's an answer so circular that I'm probably going to get a bicycle ad served to my device for 2 weeks. But even when you imagine that real human beings doing the work, originalism and textualism fall apart when confronted by reality. Their alleged objectivity can't handle even the simplest rules once we understand the rules have to be applied to all different kinds of people. I can prove that. Imagine one of the most basic and textually obvious laws people interact with every time you go to the store. A sign says, "No dogs allowed." For textualists, the meaning of the sign is obvious. Dogs are frowned upon in the establishment. But what about cats? Presumably, cats are allowed to enter the store. And would it be wrong to extend the prohibition to a wider diversity of animals than those contemplated by the sign at the door? What if I wanted to shop with my pet tiger? Assuming I'm in a jurisdiction that otherwise allows pet tigers, I shouldn't be in violation of the sign. I might argue that a tiger is just a very large cat. Of course, the business owner might disagree. They might even say the original meaning of dogs is really dangerous animals, and argue that their sign still applies. But what if I say, oh, okay then, I'll send in my falcon, which I've trained to find what I need? What if I have trained a monkey butler? What if I'm Mike Tyson and I want to bring all kinds of harmless yet poop-filled pigeons into the store? Is the owner condemned to a menagerie until they invest in a sign that reads, only house cats allowed? What if I'm blind and have an actual dog as a licensed service animal? Surely the no dog sign doesn't apply to a customer who can receive service only with an aid of a canine companion. What kind of fascist, ableist store denies seeing eye dogs? Even an instruction as simple as no dogs allowed contains textual ambiguities when it's placed in the real world. That's where originalism and Steve Calabresi's original public meaning of grammar books is supposed to come in. Dogs has an objective meaning. And that meaning probably hasn't changed from much of the 18th century's Farmer's Almanac to a 21st century taxonomy textbook. Originalists might also look to the earliest laws excluding dogs to see if other animals were excluded and the circumstances surrounding their adoption of those laws. When they get really deep in the cups, you'll find an originalist trying to justify their answer to the question with reference to some letter from Thomas Jefferson who wrote to James Madison about his experience in the Paris Zoo. All of this is BS. Because the objective definition or original public meaning of the word dog is not the relevant legal question. The question is when the objective instruction must yield to the needs of the specific individual or the society at large. Do we favor store owners with specific signs or customers with specific needs or special needs? Answering that question involves a subjective determination about whether we care about blind people that day. You could say no. You can say the clear text says no dogs. Sorry. Mr. Wonder, you'll have to shop somewhere else. But that's a subjective choice about what kind of society we want to live in, not an objective requirement of the law of signage. Conservatives like originalism because it provides a subjective answer to all life's legal questions. It favors the needs of white male patriarchy and those with access to the ruling class over the needs of everyone else. Just like Alito and Dobbs, originalists never want people to ask why the old, white, dead enslavers they worship believed what they believed. They don't use the original public meaning as the starting point for an inquiry. They use it as an endpoint to dispense with all further discussion. The Constitution does not mention abortion, case closed. Is about the most juvenile and intellectually soft method of assessing the legal foundation for reproductive rights imaginable. But for juvenile and intellectually soft minds like Samuel Alito, it is enough. Because it gets him where he wants to go. It's important to understand that conservatives were not always like this. Just 30 years ago, the Supreme Court heard a major challenge to the abortion rights, the opportunity to overturn Roe versus Wade. That case was called Planned Parenthood of Southeastern Pennsylvania versus Casey. Many of you have heard of that case. And the Supreme Court that heard that in 1992 was stacked with 8 justices appointed by Republican presidents. And conservatives of that era were every bit as partisan as they are now. Some of the Republicans on the Planned Parenthood court would go on to appoint George W. Bush president just 8 years later. But Roe versus Wade survived that conservative court. By a vote of 5-4, the court ruled to affirm. albeit with new restrictions. All 5 votes in the majority came from the Republican-appointed justices. The lone justice appointed by a Democrat, Byron White, joined the dissent. The difference between conservatives then and conservatives now is 30 years ago you could still find conservatives who cared about practicality. The conservative majority in Planned Parenthood did not like abortion. They were just as skeptical about federal power, but they were just as skeptical about federal powers trampling over states' rights as the conservatives claims to be today. But they understood that abortions would happen, whether the court approved them or not. They understood that some form of abortion has appeared in every society since the dawn of the Homo sapiens species. They understood that the issue in front of the court was not whether abortions would be allowed, but whether they would be inevitably happen, they would be safe, well-regulated, and available regardless of the person's ability to send their mistress to camp. Considering the practical impact of the decisions used to be a fair standard thing that Supreme Court justices would do. Lawyers call such concerns reliance interests, to be the technical term. And it basically means that laws or rulings that people have structured their lives around should not be disregarded by unelected judges. I think, for instance, some of our copyright laws are woefully out of date. I think that they're unnecessarily chilling on content creators who can't play a song from Encanto on social media platforms like Twitch and TikTok without Disney lawyers crashing down on their heads, but the reliance interests the movie. And recording industries have, as you know, American copyrights as such. I shouldn't probably throw them out on an ideological lark. In Planned Parenthood, the majority, which included Sandra Day O'Connor, the first woman on the Supreme Court, essentially based their rulings on reliance interests that the country had in Roe versus Wade. She wrote, "People have organized intimate relationships and made choices that define their view of themselves and their places in society in reliance on the availability of abortion in the event that contraception should fail." Now fast forward 30 years to Dobbs. There, Samuel Alito says that he can find no concrete reliance on abortion rights because abortions are unplanned activity. He then argues that the court is ill-equipped to assess the national psyche, and amazingly says that reliance interests are more appropriately found in property law. Dobbs is literally about whether people have a fundamental right to their own bodies. But Alito is out here saying that people rely on the court's property decisions more than Roe. Alito is doing what originalism was designed to do, give conservative justices an excuse to ignore all the factors in their ideological march toward extremism. Originalism cares nothing for practicality. In fact, it argues against judges considering the real modern world impact of their rulings. It is wrong to force a woman to give birth to a baby that she doesn't want. And I say that assuming that she consented to have sex in the first place, and that giving birth wouldn't actually kill her. It's barbaric to force a woman who had a consensual sex to carry on an unwanted pregnancy to term, even if she could carry that fetus to term safely. I don't even have a word for what it is to force a rape victim to carry her assailant's baby to term to the risk of her own life. I don't think there is a word for that. But you rarely hear even liberals talk about abortion this way, especially if you listen to liberal white men. The white male liberal talking point on abortion has always been that it should be safe, legal, and rare. Even Tim Kaine, Hillary Clinton's running mate in 2016, has talked this way. Liberals continuously fail to articulate an equal protection argument for abortion rights. They cede the legitimate state interest ground. Conservatives talk about abortion like they're on a righteous crusade to stop a baby holocaust, while white male liberals talk about it like they're embarrassed and sorry that somebody was pregnant, but here we are. That's why abortion rights are under constant attack. It's not because the attacks are legally any better than what conservatives usually do. Their legal argument against abortion is the same as their legal argument against gay marriage, and the same as their legal argument in favor of the death penalty. It's all one monster. They believe in a country that is limited to the best available thoughts of racist, long-dead white men. Now, what makes abortion difficult is not some fancy lawyering from the right, but the near refusal to defend it from the left. The hard sell is almost always left to women and abortion activists, while men scramble around trying not to make each other mad. I can turn over a rock on Twitter and find some person with no legal training able to passionately explain why segregation is wrong, or why the death penalty is immoral, or how love is love, but ask people about abortion and it's, well, I think the important thing is that women get to choose for themselves. Retweet if you agree. Don't get me wrong, choice is great. It's a fine frame. It's a language designed to appeal to people who have generally held religious belief about when life begins. And even the word choice should remind those adherents that not everybody shares their choice of God. And yet we coexist. But the better legal frame is forced birth is evil and should never be compelled by a legitimate government. The end. Clearly, law is not a science at all. It's not physics. Gravity has not changed, although its understanding has changed, and science is based upon facts. But the law is constantly changing. The law and the Constitution are like jazz. They improvise, they adapt, they change, they evolve. Theology is also like jazz, or should be, at least for me, constantly evolving, improvising. Unitarian Universalism has given me, and hopefully all of you, the tools, the instruments to create a worldview that celebrates all persons. This is where hope begins and forces us, and this is where hope begins as the forces of power and money increase their influences. The real lives of people and the women who fight back. So far, in every case, when citizens have been able to vote on abortion rights, they have won. Kansas, Ohio, although the Republican-dominated legislature there has refused to recognize the result. We still see, and we will wait to see what happens in Missouri, hopefully in the fall. So, shout out to all our Missouri refugees. Voting is our most precious gift. Voting is one of our sacraments, a visible sign of the independent web of life. The UUA has made a priority of this social action, raising awareness. It's called UU the Vote, and we will certainly participate in this effort that will be coming in this election year. This election will have consequences beyond our generations and more. Our hope lies in each other. So I would ask everyone to, and I'm sure everyone here has no problem with and complies with all this voting for every election, making yourself known to all the candidates, getting all the information that you need. Write letters to policymakers, especially in Missouri. The expression of our religious identity and our theology is tied to bodily atonement. And our hope is in each other and the ways that we treat each other and we go together. Stewardship is both financial donations as well as volunteering your time, talent, and treasure. We continue to need support for our worship, our coffee hour, and our ushering. If you can't write a check, please help our church survive and thrive by offering your time to help. Please give what you can, because all of your gifts are needed for this church to prosper. You may mail your financial gift. I think it's still to First Unitarian Church, Robin, is that correct? Post Office Box 494, Alton, Illinois 62002, or you can give electronically through the Givelify or PayPal links on the church's webpage. If you're willing to donate your time, talent, please contact a board member. Let us know what you can do to help. Give what you will and what you are able, for you are a generous people. Please join me in our offering that's printed on the screen here. May this offering equip us to inspire love and seek justice. Announcements?
I want to thank you for your message today. It really aligned with the larger discussion we had yesterday. We reviewed Heather Cox Richardson's talk at WashU, the Center for Religion and Spirit and Politics, and it really aligns with how important it is for us to be involved in that process, to put our values up front and forward. So thank you, John, for that message. Let's see, what do we got coming up here? Just to give you a quick overview. We do have a board meeting tentatively scheduled for tomorrow night, but I'm not sure how many of us will be available to talk. So I'll be sending an email out about that. If you have anything you want to bring to the board, let me know. The next 2 weeks, Reverend Claudia Hall will be in the pulpit. She's going to have a ministers hangout on the 22nd. Not sure where that'll be yet, but look for something in the news in the church this week. The new member class also, I know she's already spoken with a few people, but please email her for the Zoom link. And we're asking, obviously, for masking. Afterwards, we have a 15-minute delay, because what we want to do is for anybody who is immunocompromised, if they want to still socialize, we want to still create a safe space for them, and then they're welcome to stay or go at that point, enabling us to then do whatever. So we've got, I know Peg's got a whole bunch of things on her agenda for coming up with some activities, which I will not put her on the spot to share now, but we'll start to put a calendar together. I know Suzanne is continuing to work on the website and getting that up and running. Anything else anybody wants to share that I need to know about? Go ahead. Yeah, and set up in this space too. We don't really have a schedule, but yep, absolutely. Be good. Thank you, everybody. Yes, go ahead, Mary. Oh, thank you. Yes. Buddy, who is our business analyst, works with our accountant to do all our books. His sister died of a really severe case of COVID, so and it's just it's bad news. So there's a card out in the lobby, so please feel free to sign off on that. Thank you.
I invite you to join me now in the reciting prayer as we extinguish the chalice. The light of truth and meaning, we are keepers of this flame until we meet again. For part of our closing words this morning, we're going to sing together hymn number 149, Lift Every Voice and Sing, number 149, projected on the screen. I have one more closing. I'd like to read from a poem by Amanda Gorman. Every day we are learning. Every day we are learning how to live with essence, not ease, how to move with haste, never hate, how to leave this pain that is beyond us, behind us. Just like a skill or any art, we cannot possess hope without practicing it. It is the most fundamental craft we demand of ourselves. Thank you.